Back to the NFL we go, and Tom Brady turns 44 in August, and he's showing no signs of slowing down. Back in May, Buccaneers GM Jason Licht suggested Brady could play till he's 50. Well, Brady addressed those comments in USA Today, saying 50, that's a long time. Even for me, that's a long time. I've always said 45 was the age I wanted to reach, and that was my goal. This year I'll be 44, next year I'll be 45. I got a 2-year contract. I'm going to be able to obviously play this year, and God forbid anything happens, but play next year and then see what happens after that. If I still want to keep playing, I might be able to do that. And if that's enough, then that would be enough. So he's giving us a sense of where we can finally see, potentially, the end of what is the greatest career in the history of the sport. And Mike Tannenbaum, you were making the point this morning that there is sneaky big news about another move the Bucs have made this offseason that might wind up being extraordinarily important.
That's right, Greeny. For all the great things that Tampa Bay did, bringing the band back together, drafting Kyle Trask, quarterback from Florida, in the bottom of the second round may be the biggest transaction because the old axiom, let's win for today and develop for tomorrow. Trask was unbelievably productive the last 2 years. He was 69% completion this year at Florida. And when you think about who better to learn from than Byron Leftwich, Tom Brady, Clyde Christensen, who coached Peyton Manning and countless others, it's an ideal situation where if in 2 years Tom Brady finally retires, you may have your next quarterback, and it's a great way of setting things up, not just for today, but if I'm Tampa Bay, hopefully for the next 5-10 years.
I like that point and that take. So we're developing for tomorrow. That makes sense. Chris, let's talk about the winning for today. This Buccaneers team, as he mentioned, is absolutely loaded. Right now, how would you describe the degree to which you would see them as the favorites in the NFC?
I think they're the prohibitive favorite in the NFC. I mean, there's a short list of teams that you would see challenging them. If Aaron Rodgers goes back to the Packers, it would be Green Bay and the Los Angeles Rams. And Greeny, in my mind, that's about it. So, I mean, based on what they've done this offseason, being able to retain all 22 starters, I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to be viewed as the leader in the clubhouse out of the NFC. And for Tom Brady in particular, the fact that he put an expiration date on his career, a guy that's been able to keep that chip on his shoulder for 21 seasons, I got to think that he's going to be intent on maximizing the final 2 chapters of his career. He's not going to take anything for granted, especially knowing that he has a championship caliber supporting cast anchoring him. So I just feel like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the next couple of years have to be viewed as a team out of the NFC that's going to be representing them in the Super Bowl.
Well, Graz, you do a feature called Overreaction or Not Overreaction. If people were to say it's the Buccaneers over the field in the NFC, would that be an overreaction?
It's not an overreaction because they're the best team on paper, right? And the division looks like it might be taking a step back. We don't know what the Saints are going to look like in the post-Drew Brees era, for example. But, I mean, you know, we've had this conversation over and over again. I mean, it's so hard to repeat in the NFL. They had great, for instance, they had great injury luck last year in terms of guys lost to, games lost to injury. That doesn't necessarily repeat itself year after year. Not that you're wishing that on anybody, but look, they have Brady. He overcomes a lot of things. We talked about their deficiencies all last year, and there they were in January and February delivering. So I don't know why we would doubt him. He says he wants to play till he's 45. I just assume he's going to play till he's 45. And yeah, he might win the next couple Super Bowls because it's what he does.
It is just ridiculous the degree to which he has completely rewritten the way we look at stuff. We are talking about a 44-year-old athlete, and we're saying, well, he overcomes a lot of right? This has never happened before. Certainly in all the Brady, he wore a shirt that said, "I'm offended." And then the big buzz that was created over this weekend, as I turned to Dan Graziano, my insider, who is not a golf insider, but the big buzz was that he renewed his membership at Green Bay Country Club. And people are very excited about that.
Right. The problem is there's no insider work to be done that hasn't been done, right? We know where things stand. They haven't advanced. So now we're just doing tea leaves, right? So, he renewed his golf membership in Green Bay. So he must be thinking about going back there, right? So if people around the league want to speculate, people with the Packers want to know what that means. So if you're looking at that and you're starting to think, all right, well, maybe ultimately he comes back, right? Maybe ultimately he just sort of swallows hard and says, if I'm going to play this year, which I want to do, it's going to have to be in Green Bay, and then we can figure it out after the season. Then that's what the Packers want at this point. The question becomes, how do you move forward? Do you forgive the minicamp fines? How do you get him in the right frame of mind to help you win this year? This is the problem the Packers hope they have come late July, early August. And at this point, I mean, no one knows what's going to happen, but you start to think that that may be the road it's headed down.
The only person who might know, pardon me, is Aaron Rodgers. And it's not even clear yet that he knows for certain what he's going to do. But Chris Canty, just following this as you have and knowing him to whatever degree you do, at least of him, does he seem like the kind of person who's going to do what Dan is saying, is basically swallow hard, show up, and however it is that he can try and finesse it, come back and play for this team again after everything that's happened?
Yeah, Greeny, I think Aaron Rodgers could potentially go back to the Green Bay Packers. Now, it would involve their general manager making some huge concessions in terms of giving Rodgers some long-term guarantees about his tenure as the Green Bay Packers quarterback beyond 2021. But the thing that I look at and what probably will motivate Aaron Rodgers to come back is that Green Bay represents the best opportunity for him to compete for a championship. At this point in his career, it's about his legacy. And when you start talking about the greatest quarterbacks of all time, most of those guys have multiple championships. Joe Montana, multiple championships. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, etc. So if Aaron Rodgers wants to be vaulted into that conversation, then he's going to have opportunities to compete at the highest level. I think Green Bay is the landing spot that gives him the best chance to do that.
That's fair. And so you're talking about what the GM might do. Let's bring our GM into the conversation on that thought. Mike Tannenbaum, if you're the GM in Green Bay, what are you doing right now?
I'm doing two things, Greeny. One is I am forgiving the fine. I've been in this situation before. You're looking for ways to reinvigorate the discussions with Aaron Rodgers and his agent. And look, $93,000 isn't a lot to Aaron Rodgers, but it's a reason to pick up the phone. It's a reason to say, hey, let's get together. We want to try to make progress. We're going to forgive the fine. And importantly, the other thing I'm doing, and the verb here is important, I am scouring for alternatives, because if I'm the Packers, the worst case scenario is not losing Aaron Rodgers. It's losing Aaron Rodgers and losing games. So if it's Gardner Minshew, is it Jimmy Garoppolo, is it Nick Foles? I have to make sure that if Jordan Love isn't ready, which is no fault to Jordan Love because he didn't practice last year because of COVID, you have to get your starter ready. I have a really good football team, so if eventually I trade Aaron Rodgers, I need to have a viable replacement, and that person may not be on campus right now.
What do you think, Chris Canty?
I completely disagree with Mike Tannenbaum. I mean, they went out and made the deal for Blake Bortles this offseason, and say what you want about Blake, he's got over 70 starts in the NFL at quarterback. So you have a competent veteran presence in that room. I don't need to go scouring the free agent market looking for another option. And the reality is that you drafted Jordan Love to be the successor for Aaron Rodgers. So unless that veteran quarterback that you're bringing in is Aaron Rodgers, then Jordan Love needs to be the guy that's under center in week one. He'll have a full offseason. He went through OTAs. He went through minicamp. He'll have a normal training camp with preseason games. If Jordan Love's not ready to play when week one rolls around with all of the snaps, then that's an indictment on the coaching staff or the front office or maybe even both.
Quick final thought, Graz, on all of that, on the possibilities of any more wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, look, I mean, they bring in Bortles.